So, welcome back to the Stories in Two podcast, episode 2, season 4. I am Fiona.
And I'm Ciara.
How are you, Ciara?
I'm good. It still kind of blows my mind that we're on season 4. Considering there was a period of time where it was just endless weeks upon weeks.
Week after week after week.
Yeah.
We've a lot more direction now.
Yeah, I've done that with the Social Care podcast as well. We've gone seasonally. And it feels, I definitely prefer seasons, I think.
Yeah.
Just mentally, it's a bit more manageable. And better for planning it out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the seasons approach.
Yeah, it's just like you said, planning, and you do get those little breaks in between. Like when we were doing episode week by week, sometimes I was like, oh God, what are we going to even talk about? That was before we were doing books as well.
Do we have that much to say?
Do we have an oddly enough?
Oh yeah, that's... How do you feel about oddly enough now? Do you miss it?
No.
Are you glad it's gone?
Yeah. Unless I could find an oddly enough to do with books, but no, I don't miss it. It was a stress, I told you this. I was like, oh fuck, we're recording in an hour and I haven't come across anything that could be suitable. Yeah, I've nothing else really. Will we dive into our books?
Yes, we can. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive than we did in episode 1, but of A Court of Mist and Fury.
I finished it last night.
Very good, yeah. But you've read it before, that's your second time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but there's still, like we said last week as well, there's lots of details that you'd forget.
Yeah.
So I definitely needed to reread it for us to have a chat.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done these episodes from reading it 2 years ago, do you know?
Yeah.
I definitely needed a fresh read. So will I do a brief where we are?
Yeah, go for it. I got in my books, I did my bookmarks because I was like,
Excellent.
To do the different parts. Because I was like, and this is one thing I've noticed about myself when they do it in parts. Do you remember The Secret History? And it was book 1 and book 2. And I was like, here, this is actually making it even more daunting.
Right. Why?
So,
because there's 3 parts.
Yeah. But it was fine. But then I was like, part 1, The House of Beasts. And I was like, okay, I didn't even realise I had flown through part 2, The House of Wind. And then we've got The House of Mist. I just kind of thought, I don't know if it's particularly necessary.
So I suppose the easiest way to do it, a recap of where we left off at the end of book 1 and where we pick up in book 2, I suppose. So A Court of Thorns and Roses is book 1, Sarah J Maas, and A Court of Mist and Fury, book 2 is what we'll be discussing today.
So you said that so quickly.
Did I? Sometimes I don't realise. A Court of Thorns and
Roses and then A House of Mist and Fury.
Sometimes I don't realise how quickly I speak, and then I'm listening back. I'm like, Jesus, Fiona, is that sped up? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So the Court of Thorns and Roses. So Feyre is a human girl who ends up living in the Fae realm with Tamlin, High Lord of the Spring Court. So she falls in love with Tamlin, and at the end of book 1, and there's always this mystery. Book 1, you don't really know what's going on with the world itself in Prythian. You know that Tamlin is a High Lord, but you don't really know what his curse is and stuff. So we find out at the end of book 1, when Feyre goes under the mountain, that Amarantha is this fairy general bad bitch. And she keeps most of Prythian, I suppose, captive under the mountain. She makes her do 3 trials and tells her that she'll free Tamlin from his curse if she passes the 3 trials. Feyre does pass the 3 trials. Amarantha's not happy with that.
The 3 trials.
The 3 trials. She passes the 3 trials, which Amarantha's not happy with. So Amarantha then kills Feyre. The 7 lords of the High Court give her their drops of her power. She comes back to life as a fairy, a fae. So that's kind of where we end on book 1.
Is there a difference between a fairy and a fae?
I think the high fae, because the way they say the lesser fairies. So I think
Yeah,
like
but I mean in general, because like in fantasy books, they do kind of refer to people as fae. Do they just mean
Fae.
fairies?
I think that's where it probably started from. So we ended book 1. She's now Fae, and she's back in the Spring Court with Tamlin. And as we said, she sacrificed so much for Tamlin.
Well, where we've kind of got the description here, so will I read that out? So kind of
Yeah.
like how book 2 opens. So
Yeah.
she has rescued her lover Tamlin from the sadistic fairy queen and now possesses fae powers beyond imagining. But Feyre cannot forget the destruction she wrought to save her beloved, nor the bargain she made with Rhysand, High Lord of the feared Night Court. And again, can I just bring it back to
Yeah.
to save her beloved? Can we recognize she loved Tamlin?
She did love Tamlin.
Deeply loved
She
him.
did, yeah. She did a lot for, like, a lot more than I probably would have for poor Tamlin.
And
he didn't reciprocate. Anyway, go on.
No, I think he did. He was just a bit
not
like
in his actions, Ciara. Not in his actions.
He was just a little bit like. He's just a bit of an introvert, wasn't he? Really, like if you put it down to it, like an introvert.
Maybe.
Yeah. And as Feyre is drawn even deeper into Rhysand?
Rhysand. I say Rhysand, but it's Rhysand.
Rhysand's world. She senses a dark pain in his heart that echoes her own, for good or ill. For good or ill, Feyre must embrace the changes within her. War is looming, and only the full might of her new powers can save the people she loves. Okay, so the people she loves? That's loose there, isn't it?
I think that's a bit loose as well, yeah.
Like, considering, like, we think, oh, it's Tamlin and Lucian.
Well, Ciara, you can't give away the whole gist of the book.
Do you know what I think out of Sarah J Maas, actually, having read the book and now reading this? I'm like, that's bold. Like, that's a bold. Like,
a low-hanging fruit, you might say.
Yeah. The second book in the breathtaking fantasy series by the New York Times #1 bestseller, Sarah J Maas. Yeah. And do you know what I've noticed about Booktok? That I'm like, I would never take notice of that, is people tend to know like specific things that happen in specific chapters. So like in this book, everyone talks about chapter 55.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no way on God's green earth would I have taken notice of the fact that was chapter 55.
Well, they might not have until Booktok. And they annotate. These people have notes upon notes upon notes in their books.
I know. One of my favourite Instagram accounts to follow, Lena's Library.
She's fab.
I used to follow her because it was all about like these like mood videos, and she do like the themes. We reposted a few of them, and they did quite well on our Instagram.
Oh right.
But I used to love how she'd be like, how I see like the world of, say, The Secret History or whatever, and she used to do them. But now she's very much turned into like an annotating Instagram account, which I'm not saying I dislike, but people love annotation. They do. Like annotate my book with me, and it's like
I don't have the patience.
And all the stationery, and it's an art form, it seems.
Yeah, she did have a post up only yesterday to say, I think, is she studying literature in some way in college, and that basically that's taking up all of her time. And she's like, I know my page hasn't been the same as what many of you may have followed me for initially. She's addressed it.
Well, have you seen Noelle Gallagher is kind of almost taking a little step back?
Oh, right, okay. What the time it takes.
Well, do you know what her kind of reasoning was? And I actually think... God, I'd probably... I'm sorry, she might getting out of the podcast, Luna. She's like edging her way in. But she was saying basically, so she studied a master's in like literature. So she had to read last year like 50 pieces of literature and like comparing themes amongst them all. So she just said, and that on top of YouTube, and she's in like a book club, and she was just like, she put it in... I've joined like the Discord channel of like her book club. Like I never really I'm in the book club, but not in the book club, if that makes sense. Like, I don't
I
actually
know
read
exactly
the
what you
books or
mean.
watch
I
it,
know
but I
exactly
kind of
what you
like
mean.
to know what they're reading. But she put up a long post in that, and she was like, I'm basically just like exhausted from reading, like having to read so much. So she was like, I think from my own mind, I just need to like take a little step back. And I was
The
like,
fun must have been gone
interesting.
out of it.
Oh yeah, and like, you know, she openly talks about how she's so conscious of the numbers. Like, I have to read this amount of books. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like she kind of struggles with the maybe the Goodreads challenge pressure as well a little
Well,
bit.
we only discussed that in last week's episode. Yeah, I haven't really watched many YouTubers of late. Maybe I'll get back into it. I need to find, because some of them are long videos. They could be half an hour, and I'm like, I just want a few quick recommendations. I do like the Leo Library. Is that her name?
Okay, no, I don't
Or-
think I've followed any of her stuff.
Or the Book Leo, sorry.
The book Leo. Okay, let me go
Yeah.
on and give her a little look.
Is that her name? Yeah, the Book Leo. I think she's like, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think she might be Dutch. But I just like her videos, and she's a really lovely voice, and she's very soft spoken, and she would always she would say, like, you know, if she would give her review of it, and then she would say, like, if you like these sort of things, this would be a good book for you, or whatever. She actually kind of delves into that sort of a thing, like whatever genres you like, or whatever styles or tropes and stuff. So back to the book, I suppose. So, according to Mist and Fury, so we come back. So, Fair, deeply in love with Tamlin. She's still deeply in love with Tamlin. Hello, Marnie.
Hi.
So, Fair is deeply in love with Tamlin, but she's struggling back in the spring court. She can't sleep at night. She's getting sick every night. Tamlin is gone, absconded every day. He comes back for a quick shag at night, and then he's gone again. That
which
seems to
I'd be absolutely furious about. I'd be like, a little conversation, please.
And he won't let her out of the house, and they're to be wed. And there's no sign of Reese, so she makes a bargain with Reese in book one that one week of every month she will go to the night court. And there's no sign of him, and then suddenly it's their wedding day. She's walking down the aisle. She's having what seems to be kind of like a panic attack, and just before she gets to the aisle, Reese appears out of nowhere and takes her off.
Yeah.
So that's the first big kind of gasp of the book, I think.
Yeah.
When Reese arrives.
Like, happens early doors. So, for context, this is in part 1, The House of Beasts.
Okay, so that's when she's back in the spring court.
Yeah.
Marnie, please, your modesty.
Honestly, like...
So she goes a couple of times with Reese for a week, and she does start to kind of come out of herself. That's the big thing with Reese, is like, I'm not going to lock you up here. You can do what you want. You're free to do what you like.
He knew the things to say, really, didn't he? He knew how to sweet talk her.
He buttered her up.
Yeah. He could see what was going to win her over, I think.
Oh, yeah. So she does that a couple of times, and then there's one fateful day when Tamlin does lock her up. He shuts her into the house, and it brings her back. Go on.
Can I just say, like, right, I know you don't like Tamlin, and I know I sound like I love him. I just want to preface it right here, right now. I don't. Okay?
Right.
I'm not Team Tamlin, but I am going to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay, come on.
Could you see where Tamlin was coming from at all? Like, at all? Because if I was to be really honest, I can see why he did the things he did. Now, I don't agree with him just fecking off in the day and just shagging at night. Like, have a conversation with her. That was the thing. He was just so bad at communication.
Yeah.
And she had just had enough. Like, she's kind of like Prince Harry, like we were saying in the last episode. You know, reach the end of her tether. But I do think, right, I can see where Tamlin was coming from with, like, wanting to protect her and not wanting, you know, she probably is a target, got a big target on her back. I can see where he's coming from. And secondly, she kind of lost her patience a little too soon for me. Like, as in, if you, and I want to come back to the point where she says, as described by Sarah J Maas, her beloved, right?
Yeah.
Her beloved, she didn't hang around long.
No.
She didn't.
Well, he locked her up. Well, you see,
but
this is...
Fiona would one thing, like...
This is what goes back to what we were saying last week as well, and that's where the inconsistencies come. There's a lot of telling and not showing.
Yeah.
So for us, I agree. And I will say, let me say this. The first time I read the book, I agreed with what you were saying. And it was only as you get through the book and she keeps bringing it up about, so I suppose, like, and at first I was like, all right, calm down. But then she kind of keeps going about the fact that Amarantha kept her locked up under the mountain and she was in a cell and she was being tortured. And it's like the PTSD of that. And I don't think it's until she keeps bringing it up throughout the book later that point is driven home. So it does feel a bit like, you're like, okay, fair, I get it. But like, yeah. Because that's when she first... So he locks her up. She has an absolute freak out. And then that's when you start to learn that actually has she gotten powers from the other 7 High Lords. Yeah. Because she does some mad blast of wind or something like that.
Yeah.
Which Tamlin doesn't seem to cop onto, I don't think. It seems to be Rhys. Tamlin as well. There's a few things Tamlin I don't think picks up on very... He's not very observant.
I think he's just distracted.
Yeah.
And I
by
just
keeping her safe.
Yeah, and I just don't think... Do you know when you're like, I'll tackle this first and I'll get to that later? And I think he was trying to tackle the safety of everybody first when actually she really needed him.
Because also his curse was on him for 49 years. She only came in at the end. So like that's something... Like,
And I just
she's no empathy for Tamlin.
They didn't have great communication, and she just lost her rag pretty soon. And look, I know she didn't want the PTSD, but then she also didn't tell him any of this stuff.
No. Or did
so
she
I think
try
their communication was a bit piss poor to begin with.
Yeah. And that really is probably the end of book 1. Where she has a freak out, Rhys comes, or actually no, Mor comes and takes her away. And then that's it. She's gone from the Spring Court. She's now a member of the Night Court. And
this is book 2.
I mean, sorry, part 1 of book 2.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, your House of Beasts or whatever.
Yes.
That's probably where that ends. She ends up in the Night Court. And then she becomes a citizen of the Night Court, essentially. And she's gone from Tamlin. So, yeah, I did... So
then we kind of move into part 2, which is the House of Wind.
The House of Wind.
I will say, the House of Wind. I was like, a bit smelly in there.
When she goes to the House of Wind, and she becomes a member of Rhys's inner circle. So this is when we start to meet the new characters who are Rhys's kind of inner circle. So we have Mor, who's his cousin. She's from the Night Court as well. Castian and Azriel, who are Illyrian warriors. So they're big winged... They're lesser fairies, it says in it. They're not high fae. And it turns out that Rhys is half Illyrian. So he can actually make his wings come and go. And Amren, who is a very ancient creature who's trapped in like a fae body. But we don't really get any info except that she's like thousands and thousands of years old and she's terrifying and you don't mess with her.
Yeah.
And he gives Feyre the option, like, you can work with me. And he needs her as well. So basically, war is coming. The King of Highburn, which we've learnt in the first one, wants to destroy the human realm and take over Prythian. So Rhys then kind of phrased it as, you can come and work for me and help me and we can stop the war. And thus starts the building of their relationship, which is essentially the crux of book 2. We're also introduced here to like the political side of how Prythian works, how the fairies work. Rhys is apparently the most powerful high fae that has ever existed.
The most powerful man in the world.
How did you get trapped then? Do you know this?
It's a little bit. Sorry, we've 2 cats on the desk. Could get chaotic in a second. Girls, please now. There's a little kind of hint of Vampire Diaries off it, of like each season Or like Sons of Anarchy also has this thing where it's like, this is the
most
the
evil,
toughest guy in the world, and we're, you know, we need to fight them, and it's the same as the most evil man in the world. And then it's like next season, but they were evil until it was this person. And it's a bit like that for me. The world is so Reese, what, like, okay, so when he wanted Feyre to like start working with him and all of that crack, did you trust him? Because I was like, there is something up here, and I didn't trust him.
Yeah, I went into it thinking he's too big of a character to be lauded everywhere. So I was slightly spoiled going into reading it. So even in book 1, when he turned up and she was hiding behind the curtain and Tamlin had her hidden, in my head I was like, I instantly liked him. Because again, I was like, he's obviously a big character.
Yeah.
So we're told that he's bad, but really he probably isn't.
Bad to the bone.
Bad to the bone.
But I thought, right, maybe I'm just so naive. I was like, I think she's going to be loyal to Tamlin. I sound like such a Tamlin stan. And I'm not. I'm not. I actually prefer Reese. But I just feel like the story was sold to me differently.
Right.
Do you know?
So I think, and again, the crux of the book and why we didn't want to spoil is because she does end up with Reese. So I felt, Tamlin was fodder. He really was. And I do think, like Tamlin definitely, once she was gone, like she didn't, and I'll probably come back to this as well. No, I'll come back to it. But how will I? One of the things I think that's like the strength of book 2 as well in comparison to book 1 is because she is gone from book 1 is all the spring court, and it is really good at the world building, but it was time to start giving us more of it then. So not just they go to the summer court and they go to different places. And I do think that's all set up very well. But yeah, she's not really thinking. She's off on all these excursions with Reese, trying to find things to help them.
So
but
she's not kayaking or something.
Yeah, she's not thinking about Tamlin while she's there, really.
Oh no, but sure, she's wall to wall with activities.
That's true. Yeah, Reese has her busy.
He does. He has her fucking very busy. And you know, actually, kind of just to go back to this, the kind of point I made a second ago of like, you're setting it up for us to invest in book 1 in Feyre and Tamlin, right?
Yeah.
And I think just as a general gist, I don't like when that happens anyway. I feel like when the narrative changes or like throws me then to be like, actually they end up with this person, I don't know if I like it in general. So I don't think it's specific to this series. But I did notice, like, I was watching, it's all very highbrow over here. I was watching 365 Days, do you know?
Right, yeah.
And the new, like the 3rd movie came out. So I called over to my friend Sarah's house during the week, and she hadn't seen the 2nd movie, and I was like, oh, throw that on there, we'll get a laugh off it. So we watched the 2nd movie, and then we actually went on to watch the 3rd movie, and I got home at half 2.
3?
I got home at half 2 on a school night.
Oh, right.
AM, like, can you believe? But we weren't like really drinking, so I was just tired the next day.
Yeah.
So we watched the 2 movies, and that actually happens. This kind of change in direction of love interest happens in these movies as well. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler for anybody, but so that kind of changes direction, and movie 3 kind of ends on a slight what? So then I looked it up and I was like, is there going to be a 4th movie? Is there a 4th book? And there's no kind of sign of it yet, but the conclusion is, sorry if I'm completely ruining these for everybody and you, Fiona. I don't think it's your vibe anyway.
But I don't think that these are like, it's not like you just spoiled the end of like something like Game of Thrones or something.
I also haven't said
365.
who the other person is, but it's like these movies have been set up for her to be in love and for her and this guy to have their happy ever after. Or at least that's the story I invested in.
Right, yeah.
And now that they've thrown this in, and I was saying it to Sarah because she was really rooting for the second guy. And she was like, you know, he really loves her. He's like listening to her. Look how much happier she is as a person. And I was like, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you're saying. And I can see why he is 100% a better match, but that's not the story I've invested in.
Okay, right.
I don't want her, in my mind, I don't want them to be together, even though it's the healthier option for her.
Do you feel this about, did you find that as kind of like a criticism you have of ACOTAR and the story?
No, because I actually do prefer Reese as a character and I love the direction the story has gone in. But I just wanted to like preface that in general, maybe that's why I have a bit of a gripe with it, because I just don't like it in general.
Why you just held on to Tamlin for so long?
I was holding out till Tamlin until I'd say chapter 55. And I was like, no, she'll go back.
And she does send Tamlin a letter to say, I'm not coming back. And he
I
sends
thought though
Lucian
that he didn't
out.
get it though. I thought that something would have, like a miscommunication trope, like where that letter would somehow not end up with
And they
him.
never said whether he did or not get it. He does send Lucian together. But again, and this is the thing, right? So, okay, we might as well touch on it now while we're still on the Tamlin kind of vibe of it. But obviously, and anyone that's read the book knows that the whole of book 2 is developing her and Reese, their relationship. I think it's done really well. There's great angst. I love Reese. There's just some scenes in it that are some of my favourite, like relationship scenes in any books. I love them. You can tell he does really care about her. You find out Reese is the good guy, whatever, that's fine. But there comes a point, right, when she realises that she actually does possibly love Reese, or she definitely fancies him and wants to progress, right? Yeah. And that's when she starts to feel guilty about Tamlin. And it's kind of like she feels guilty for like leaving Tamlin and going to another High Lord. And sometimes I'm like, does she care about what it looks to other people? Or does she actually, because she never missed him. At no point before that did she pine for him or miss him. And then suddenly she fancies Reese and she's like, oh God, I feel guilty. And that to me is just more of an inconsistency of the writing, because she was adamant with Lucian that she's not going back to the Spring Court. Lucian comes upon them when they're training and tries to take her away.
She's more passionate about other things than I think Tamlin himself. Even when they initially got together, it was a bit like she didn't really want to hang out with him. Yeah.
She just wanted
to
paint.
was a bit like, this is very convenient that she's the one that'll be able to save them all and that they're soulmates.
But that's just that's a trope though anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. But then and I completely agree with you. Like, you can tell that there is hesitation of like, you're not really feeling the love between her and Tamlin, but her actions of going under the mountain, and this is where I'm like, you led me down the garden path here, that she was head over heels taken on the world for this guy. If that's not true love, I don't know what is. And I'm like, if that's what she does when she actually doesn't really love someone, what the fuck would she do for someone she would?
She claimed she did love him.
But then, and for me, it just doesn't fit well.
It's an inconsistency, I suppose. It would be a
like, I'm sorry, he locked her into the house once, and I'm not condoning it, okay? If Tom locked me in the house, I'd fucking lose my shit. But, do you know, that's why I had to say, I can kind of see why he did it.
She couldn't see. She couldn't see it.
She could not.
So, yeah, like, even, I know obviously the romance with herself and Reese is a big thing, but there is a lot more kind of adventure in this one as well. And it is very, and this is the thing, and again, this is just the inconsistencies, and we touched on this last week, and it's same thing, like she went under the mountain for Tamlin and all this, and we have like the new characters, like more especially, right? So More is Rhys's cousin, and the way Fair goes on, the whole book is us really with her and Rhys, and the others kind of pop in every now and again. But then suddenly they're her people and she would do anything for them. And like I see a lot of people saying about like the strong relationship between Feyre and More. And I just don't believe it. And most of their interactions are talking about Rhys. So all it does is actually deepen her relationship with Rhys and not More.
Yeah.
So just the way she, and again, to touch on what we said last week, these Fae are hundreds of years old and you've known them for 2 months.
I know,
And
but
you
I
trust them completely. You do anything for them. And to me, that's
Yeah.
just not believable.
So where I kind of see that the kind of bond between the friendship element has kind of come in is more so when they're going through the excursion kind of things. So like,
Yeah.
you know, when her and More like potentially die getting like the half of the book.
That was with
Do you remember-
Amryn underwater.
Oh yeah, well again kind
There
of
you
comes
go.
back to my point, all the characters are the same for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but you know, but that's where I think those bonds build because they're like, okay, you're saving my life. We're in
Yeah.
this together. And that kind of comes through, maybe near-death experiences rather
Yeah,
than
fair enough, yeah.
conversations is what I've kind of taken from it. So yeah, that's kind of what I took from that.
I just think it's for me as well, it's just kind of, it's cheesy story writing about how, like, I hate when they like scowl at I hate books when they scowl at each other or like smirk or snigger and stuff. I'm just kind of like, it's a bit cheesy. And I'm like, oh, you're all, I just hate happy families. Not happy families, but that kind of everyone's all. But then again, there's not enough of it for me. And we can get into it, but I felt there was a bit
There's
at
not
the
enough
end.
sniggering.
There's not enough of the relationship building outside of her and Rhys's relationship for me to believe how close she is with the others because she barely knows them.
Yeah.
But to your point though, that is, I suppose that does make sense. Like, you know, if they save their life or whatever.
Yeah. Like if someone saved my life, I'd be like, yeah, no, they're on my good list.
Yeah. Like even at the end, like I believe it with Rhys, that him trying to save all their lives. But I don't believe it as much as with Feyre, the way she, again, this also comes back to the cliche of the goodness of the characters. I'll sacrifice myself to save everyone else, or I'll go and do. I just think it's a real story, like way of telling a story of making stupid decisions because you need to save someone, when actually someone then sometimes has to come and save you then.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you actually, because I've not really looked up many, I've been trying to avoid like spoilers and everything anyway until I get through all of the series, although I feel like I'm kind of, certain things have come up on Booktok and I'm like, oh.
Well, really, the big spoiler is Rhys and Fair.
Yeah. And yeah, so I kind of don't really know what the general consensus is from the Booktok community on like the Tamlin Rhysland kind of thing. Like, do people like agree with me in the sense of
I've never seen that. Now, what I have
really,
seen
or am
is,
I kind of like too gung ho on it? Are most
No,
people kind of
well,
your opinion?
well, considering that most people on TikTok call Tamlin tampon, that seems to be a big consensus. More of what I have seen is people reading book 1 for the first time and being into Tamlin like you were and be like, ooh, we like this. I don't know what's going to happen. But no, generally, once she goes to Rhys, I've never seen anyone like disagree with that story.
I don't
arc.
disagree her getting with him, by the way. Like, I don't at all. I really like them together. I'm just, I suppose,
No,
a bit,
Tamlin is
a bit bamboozled as to like how Farah's feelings can change so quickly and so deeply.
Tamlin
you know?
is the butt of the joke, really. He really is.
Does Tamlin have like some sort of a happy ending?
Can't remember. See, this is it. I can barely remember. I can't really remember how. I remember how the main story ends, but I don't remember how all the side characters go.
See,
from
the
there.
fact that Tamlin is a side character now to me, it's actually like, I thought he was the character.
And yeah, so, and even to your point as well about you saying that, like, with Reese, the kind of, you were always kind of a little wary and stuff.
Yeah.
It does turn out that that's kind of an act. Now, the Night Court has always been kind of do their own thing, a law unto themselves, and there is bad people in the Night Court, but his main intentions have been to keep Valaris. He has a city, Valaris, that he has kept hidden, and it's actually like a utopia. That's where he brings Farah. So he is actually good. He does bad things for good reasons. And that's kind of his main intentions. And also, okay, so the big thing, were you shocked that they ended up being mates, or how that was done, or do you think that was done well?
I think it was done well. In terms of being shocked, no.
No. So I wasn't shocked. I thought, well, it definitely took me from left field now. Was it the surreal kind of sedator? I was like, oh, what? And he's
No, I was. And then I was like, oh yeah, but like, I don't.
It makes sense then afterwards.
Yeah, because they were making such a big deal about him.
Yeah, and I think as well, it kind of legitimizes her deserting poor Tamlin. That was it then. Tamlin's in the rearview mirror from then on.
Tamlin who?
Tamlin who? I thought it was done well. But again, mating bonds generally for me are a little... I don't love them as a trope, just because it's kind of like, oh, it's nearly like, oh, our love is stronger than everyone else's because we're mates or whatever. And I just think it's an easy way to like bond people like that. But I don't hate it either.
It's kind of just telling us, like, just so everyone knows, these people are endgame. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which I hope now that's something you like, Ciara, that you finally got an endgame for Farah.
Yeah.
And let me see.
But then it's like, what I didn't like, and I know I might be jumping around a little bit, and I am.
Yeah,
sorry
do
if
jump.
If this is confusing, but like, part 3, House of Mist, right, starts on chapter 52, and gets a bit hot and heavy a few chapters in here. But what we were getting, right, so in part 3, they're together. And what I don't like, right, about how A Court of Mist and Fury ends is I feel like Farah's playing on Tamlin's emotions.
I think you need to hang up Tamlin.
But I feel like it's like using him. I just don't think that that's very nice.
So this... Yeah.
Gonna set up a fan club.
This is a Tamlin podcast. If you ever thought you were going to get such defense of Tamlin, who'd have thunk it?
Well, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but I didn't like.
That's true.
I didn't like how she did that. Now I thought that was a bit mean.
So this is where one of the biggest, a big gripe for me in the book, right?
Yeah.
And I see it. You see it a lot in. Not a lot, but in book 4. So I won't go into spoilers or anything like that. But in book 4, because it goes to different characters in book 4, and I actually don't like Farah in book 4. And a big thing is, and this goes back to her relationship with the others. So the end of the book is the King of Highburn kind of traps them. So they're all there. The whole gang
Yeah.
is there. And it turns out that Tamlin has sold them out. And he has
But
said,
he thinks that like she's been brainwashed and he needs to
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
basically help her, because do you know, also he doesn't know anything really about
No.
the main situation or what's been going on. So he thinks like she's trapped and you know he's trying to
she
help
needs
her.
saving.
Yeah.
So, but that what happened? He basically sells them out. The King of Highburn traps them, and what Tamlin doesn't know, to his credit, he doesn't know that
No,
the King of
see,
Highburn then,
You're,
huh?
you're in the Tamlin fan club.
I know, but to his credit, the King of Highburn takes Feyre's sisters, her human sisters, Nesta and Elaine,
Yeah.
and to test out the cauldron to see if it can turn people into fairies, so he can turn the queens into fairies, he throws her sisters in and they become fae, right? But the way he kind of does it is he's shot Azrael with poison, and basically it's at his whim that he could kill Azrael, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know that technically we know that the sisters weren't going to die, but there was a
Yeah.
chance they could. And I think that Feyre would have allowed her sisters to die to save Azrael. Now, I know Rhys wouldn't have allowed Azrael to die and he might have sacrificed her sisters. But that's for me, and that goes back to the ones she loves on the back of the book. I do think that she would have sacrificed her sisters.
Yeah, I do too.
And
I
that
agree
to
with
me
you.
is kind of like,
For
again,
the sisters, like where we opened up in book 1 that she loved and basically,
everything she did was for them.
yeah.
And I like, the thing is, I love Nesta. I know she's a bit bitchy or whatever, but I do really like her character. I love that finger coming out of the cauldron
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I do think that, and again, you've known them for how long? You barely know these people. And
But
they
then
could
do
have
you-
died. But the sisters could have died.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Do you think that plays on the storyline of, you know, kind of, they were saying, oh, don't lose like your human heart?
Yeah, you could do.
And
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like showing maybe, if we were to look into it on a deeper level, maybe.
Yeah, well,
That could be like the human side of her has fucking left the building, like.
yeah, she's full fae now.
Yeah.
As are her
Because,
sisters.
yeah. Yeah.
That to me, I was just kind of in it. That those sort of things just. I just think they're kind of inconsistencies in character development for the sake of moving
the
it
dad's
forward.
fecked off, like he doesn't even
Dad's gone.
realize he has no kids like left, really.
Yeah. And the book ends. The book ends where she goes back to, like you said, playing on Tamlin's emotions. To stop the bloodshed, to stop the fighting, to stop people dying, she agrees to go back to the night court, the spring court with Tamlin, and she's essentially gone back as a spy.
Yeah, and I did like, and I was a bit like, ooh, I think I got goosebumps, like when they were like, she was anointed like the high priestess of the.
Oh, she's the High Lady of the Night
the
Court.
high lady, yeah, the high
Yeah.
lady of the night court, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So her and Rhys are equals now, and they did get married, and they've broken the bargain, but they haven't broke the mating bond.
Yeah.
The bargain was kind of gone anyway.
So does that mean her tattoos are gone?
Only the one that she got under the mountain. She has another one that she got when they got married, but she's wearing a glove. So, no, I think she said she's glamoured it as well, that you can't see it. So that's how the book ends. She's now back in the spring court with Tamlin, pretending that Rhys had some sort of, because Rhys has mind powers, that he had some sort of mind control over her. Rhys and Maura kind of played along. They've got out. They've gone back to the night court. And Feyre now is in the spring court. The King of Highburn is at large.
Yes.
And that's where the story is going.
And I will say, I am halfway through Wings and Ruin, which is book 3, and I will say, any like nice feelings towards Tamlin that I had do also end with book 2.
Okay, right, okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
when
yeah.
we move into book 3, I am very much fuck Tamlin.
Okay, right, okay.
So I'm just going to put that out there. The fan club is now over.
yeah.
So I
So
could see his point of view in books 1 and 2, but we're leaving it there.
we're leaving it there. So tell me this, if you were to say your highlights and your lowlights of the book. Favourite moments, if you have any. What stands out to you, if anything?
I think kind of when they finally get together, like when he tells her about like the mating storyline and why he kind of did what he did. I think that's probably a highlight. Do you know, I don't know if I have many
Now, let's preface this. We both gave this book 5 stars.
Yeah. The last 100 pages for me are the best. Probably a low point for me is it's just this one that I can think of, but I think because I'm halfway through book 3, maybe this is why I'm like, are you joking? Like, is Lucian having the mate bond with the sister?
With Elaine.
Yeah, I was just a bit like, of course you do. And I was like, as I was saying to you, there's a stink of in Twilight with Jacob, the werewolf, imprinting on
the baby.
The baby, and I'm like, no, just go off and live your own life. Like, it's when
Lucian
sad.
Doesn't look like Lucian's a follower.
But that's why I'm like, he's just a little bit of a misfortune for me.
Yeah. Although I don't mind him. This is the thing. Sometimes I'm like, get your own mind, Lucian.
He hasn't been a good
friend
to Farah, though, I think.
No, but
I liked him in book 1 because he used to come and help her.
Remember, I just think Farah's just turned up.
But in book 1, Under the Mountain, he'd come and he'd risk. Like, he definitely risked more than. Oh, Tammy bye.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Tamlin was just going to bed every night on a soundless sleep.
Honestly, Tamlin is trash, really, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you not see where he's coming from, though?
Oh, he's just trying to keep you safe. Like, that means nothing.
Yeah, I know.
And that's where it kind of gets. Sometimes it can be a bit of a broken record of like Reese as well, being like, you can do whatever you want. I'll never stop you from doing whatever you want. This, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, all right, you've said this before. Let me see. My highlights. I do think it wasn't as good the second time reading it, but I do think the first time I read it, the tension with Reese and Fair was delicious. I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
And I love him. I love that he calls her Fair darling. I just love him. I do love him. There's one scene where they're up training on the roof and she has a bit of a moment, and next thing he comes over and he wraps his wings around her and she's just enclosed in that, and that is one of my favourite things in the whole world. I don't know why. It's so little, but when he wraps the wings around her, oh my God, loved it.
If I see, this is where we're really different. I can't imagine them as like cartoons.
Yeah.
Like to me, I have to visualize them as real people, and he has a bit of like a Henry Cavill vibe off him for me. Maybe slightly darker hair. And I do fancy a bit of Henry Cavill.
Do you? Yeah.
There's something about him, and actually, I think as a person in real life, he's quite questionable.
I've seen recently.
I've seen like whisperings of not a very nice man.
There's a lot of that coming out. Yeah, there was questions about like young actresses in movies and stuff.
And I started listening to the Dumois podcast, which is basically just a whole load of like
they're the blind items, aren't they?
Blind items, and she gets a lot of like people sending her stuff now on the back of like how big the podcast and the Instagram are. So she gets some really good gossip, and she was saying basically, was he on The Witcher?
Yeah, he is the main guy in The Witcher, yeah.
Oh, not anymore. He's basically been written out of it because he's
a creep.
So bad on set to all the female production. Oh. But like not even like just trying it on with them, but like actually won't do anything they say. Like, he'll change the script, or he just doesn't respect them. Like, yeah, apparently he's not a very nice guy at all.
Because I've heard that he's got lines in his contracts to do with, like, so Millie Bobby Brown was in that Enola. What's the one he's Sherlock Holmes in it? Is it Enola?
I haven't heard of it.
There's 2 movies. Basically, she's the main character and she's Sherlock Holmes' younger sister. Hang on now.
Yeah, no, I've not heard of it.
Enola Holmes. Oh, it is literally Enola Holmes. But he's Sherlock Holmes' her brother. But basically, the first I saw of it was that he's got things in his contract, whereas if he's working with girls underage, he's not to spend to. I can't remember what it was, but people were like, oh, this is very transparent and what should be done. But then people were coming out being like, the reason they've got that is because he's gotten in trouble before for underage girls and therefore he's just trying to cover himself, sort of a thing. I don't know what's true. We're only speculating here at Stories and Two.
He is hot though.
He's a big lad, yeah. He's bulky. But I don't really fancy him.
I liked him as Superman now.
Yeah, I haven't seen Superman, you see.
Yeah, no, I do. Unfortunately, I fancy him. I fancied Armie Hammer as well, but sure, look where that went.
Oh, well, Jesus, Ciara likes the creeps.
I don't.
I'm just trying to think as well, any other highlights. Other highlights is I do love Cassian. I think of the band of new Night Court pals, I really like Cassian. I really like her sisters. I really like, well, Elaine's a bit of a drip as well, but I love Nesta.
Yeah.
And there's really good world building. Like, it's pure escapism. And I do think, even though book 1, a lot of it is in the Spring Court, I do think the strength of the book is Prythian and the world. And I definitely was able to, because otherwise sometimes you'll read something and you're like, I can't really imagine it or picture it. Yeah. I never really had that. Like, when she goes to the weaver's cottage, I could imagine the whole thing in the woods. When they go to the mountain, to the bone carver, I could imagine the whole thing. I think she does a really good job of describing the world. Yeah. Valaris, I can see Valaris in my mind's eye.
Yeah, same.
So that to me would be a big highlight. And the lowlights then are just, sometimes I don't love Feyre as a character. I think she can be annoying at times.
She hasn't annoyed me yet.
Okay. Again, that could be as it goes on.
Yeah.
She's just so good. She's amazing. Everyone loves her. She can do no wrong. I don't like when characters can do no wrong.
But that's not her perception.
No, but it's how it annoys me with no, I know, but that's something that, like, everything she does, everyone's like she'd never do something that pisses people off because it was for them or something.
I'm sure she's pissing Tamlin right off now.
Well, Tamlin wants her back. She deserted him and he still wants her back.
No, but Tamlin doesn't have the full picture, Fiona.
This is it, you see, this is it.
He thinks she has been captured. This is it, yeah. Riesland is holding her as a slave up there.
And turned against poor Tamlin. And
wouldn't she not be like, you're as good coming after me?
But there you are. And tell me this, and we won't get into it because I'm sure we'll do another episode to wrap it all up, but how are you finding book 3?
Good. It's a little slow. Like, I'm not like, oh, gotta pick that right back up. Yeah. And where I'm currently at is there's nothing really much happening.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
It's a little bit like, we must get the sisters down for breakfast. And I'm like, okay. Like, it's just a bit like boring. Okay. At the moment, I'm sure it will pick back up. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Have you anything else to add or?
No, I think I've kind of got it all off my chest now.
Off your chest? Let me see if I just have anything else. No, I think
I think it's your turn to do like a book of the week as well.
Well, we'll do A Court of Mist and Fury, surely.
I suppose that would make sense.
That would make sense, yeah. So I will get started on A Court of Wings and Ruin. because the reason I want to read it is because I actually want to reread The Silver Flames, book 4.
Yeah.
And now, especially now that I'm going on TikTok and I'm seeing all the TikToks and stuff, and because I read book 2, I'm excited to get back to book 4. So I'll reread
Okay.
book 3 and then get on to book 4.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Brilliant. Well, thank you as always, Fee.
Thank you as always. Yeah, I've nothing else really.
Really?
Really? Nothing else, no.
No, me neither.
Okay, we'll finish it up there. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you
Bye.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.